Below Limgrave lies the Sofra River, a small area of the Eternal City, and within Sofra lies melted mushrooms. As the description reads, it drips with a vicious fluid that behaves much like oil. These mushrooms are a crafting material the Tarnish needs to acquire to craft three things: oil pots, roped oil pots, and soap. Soap in Elden Ring is a surprisingly useful item. Its most obvious useful feature is cleaning the tarnished of blood, albinoic blood included, which is great for the good old-fashioned souls. However, soap could also be used to clean off passive buildup of scarlet rot and poison from your armor. It is also possible to use soap to completely negate poison buildup altogether, but this won't work for scarlet rot. Soap will also clean any oil from your body, but this does not apply to the oil tier, as that constantly applies the status effect of oil to the tarnish. But you can see that it removes it for just a second before the effect gets reapplied due to the nature of the tier. A comment on the Fextra Life page for soap also stated that it could be used to cleanse destined death, so I attempted to test this, but at least to me, it only partly worked. And also, as you can tell, I have not fought Malekith in so long. All of his moves went out of the window. I was like, okay, yeah, so maybe it can work, maybe it can't work, but this is me attempting to see if it worked, and it kind of looks like it does, but if it can cleanse Destined Death, then it's safe to assume it can also cleanse Black Flame, but I also did not test that out myself. However, the most interesting thing about soap is that it appears to only be in the Eternal City. Melted mushrooms, the ingredients for soap, the physical item of soap, and the nomadic cookbook for soap are all obtained below ground in Sofra. There is no way to acquire soap or the mushrooms needed to craft it above ground. In fact, the idea of filth is quite welcomed in the Lands Between. Dung Eater would be the most obvious case of this, but the usage of dung as an item is everywhere. The horn-strewn excrement, blood-tainted excrement, gold-tinged excrement, golden dung, fetid pot, hefty fetid pot, and the roped fetid pot are all items and ingredients that the Tarnish can get to weaponize the idea of filth. On top of this, there does not appear to be a single toilet in Lane Dell, even though there is a sewage system. Instead, only the wells in the city are connected to the sewage system. Filth can also be understood through jars, stuffed with human innards and left to ferment until they quite literally come to life. Some jars are moved to Jarburg, where Potenate looks after them. The Potenate needs smooth, gentle hands to attend to the innards within the jars, and soft hands to create new jars, making sure the innards aren't mushed beyond repair, for lack of better wording. Butterflies are a common bug type in Elden Ring. Within the real world, most butterflies are scavengers. They flock to rotten body fluids from dead animals, or sometimes even feces, and in such, they turn these filthy things into their means to stay alive. I bring this up as butterflies are constantly found to be at Melania's side. Melania's body is rotting away, and as such, it makes sense to find these scavenger butterflies so closely attached to her. Granted, not all butterfly types are like this in Elden Ring, but I wanted to bring up the ties to butterflies flocking to Melania due to her rotting nature as food for thought. The Formless Mother also asks her followers to embrace into reaching into her very body, creating an open wound, and using the accursed blood as a weapon. I could make the argument that this is an act of weaponizing filth once again, as using an open wound as a source of damage is certainly not clean. Perfumers are also a prominent group in the Lands Between, beings who believe strong scents and fauna alone can combat filth. The idea that smell can combat disease just is not true. You can overpower the smell of filth, but that smell is only a temporary fix. The dirt underneath will eventually devour that scent. In contrast to these points, the Eternal City doesn't appear to embrace filth and instead congregates this filth in one area, the Ant Cave in Anzel River, which is purposely far removed from the social life of the Eternal City. I personally and subjectively wouldn't regard the Lake of Rot as filthy either. Its placement underground is clear and defined, and that lake is not inherently inhabitable as an area to start with. The lake itself, the Grand Cloister, Kindred of Rot, and the Dragonkin boss are all ancient beings from the All era, predating Marika's reign completely. On the topic of Scarlet Rot, it doesn't appear to worm its way into the Eternal City despite being right next door to it, which is strange, as we know that the Scarlet Rot will, without fail, decay every single thing it gets its hands on in one way or another. Instead, the rot festers above ground and even in the Shadow Realm. The Nox, Lake of Rot, and all aren't connected in a way that the Scarlet Rot would go as far as to avoid the Eternal City out of the goodness of its heart. So instead, perhaps the Scarlet Rot isn't found underground because the civilization was not filthy enough to warrant decay to begin with. The Eternal City itself is also an ancient civilization, so perhaps this is a case of Soap not being educated down into history to Marika's reign. In fact, you might want to bring up the Flame Cleanse Me incantation, which indeed does rid the tarnish of afflictions like Scarlet Rot. However, this incantation was invented by the Fire Monks, who live in the remote mountaintops, and is also heterical, so the Lands Between would not have had any knowledge of this incantation. Law of Regression also exists, but this incantation is so canonically advanced that not even Goldmask can cast it. So, whilst there are means of cleansing in the Lands Between, there is no means that is widely accessible, not restricted behind some form of higher power, and as simple as soap. An item that is free to all and not restricted in any way. Soap in Elden Ring is a very curious item the more you read into the world design before you. It could be regarded as unimportant, but it can interestingly be pieced together on a scale larger than you would think. Perhaps if Marika had 2 melted mushrooms, she might have survived the shattering. This post on Reddit by u/Season1 is a great read, and if you have any time, I highly recommend it. This post makes a whole bunch of excellent relations, mostly around the blind swordsman, oh my goodness, and it was partly why I wanted to voice my own theory crafting around soap, but this Reddit post deep dives into like the most minute and smaller details, like the ancient making of soap and how soap, I think it talks about the beginnings of soap in the Middle East. But yeah, really great post, and I highly recommend it. It's a great read. The comments also really good on it as well. But it is a long read, so maybe read it when you have like some time, like on a lunch break or something. As always, please let me know your thoughts on soap and my video, and any kind of theory crafting on Filth in the comments that you might have. And also please let me know if anyone has thought into hygiene within Elden Ring on this level. Aside from that, as always, praise the sun, and don't forget to take a shower.
Don't you dare let yourself go hollow, lest my time spent on you be wasted.